Hello and welcome to week 2 of the LA Times College Football Roundtable. I am your host, Ryan Kartje, USC beat writer for the LA Times, joined once again by Ben Bolch, our UCLA beat writer, and Dylan Hernández, our esteemed columnist and FIFA expert. Uh, we're here to talk USC, UCLA. Obviously, a quiet week for UCLA by virtue of the fact that they did not play. Their Big Ten debut is coming up this week against Indiana. But USC did play and played quite well in a 48-0 shutout of Utah State. Once again, USC's defense wins the day. And Dylan, I know you wrote about how the path has kind of opened up for USC to the college football playoff. How much of that is because of what we've seen out of this defense?
I mean, that's everything, right? I mean, I think, kind of past seasons, I mean, even last year when they kind of started off pretty well, you kind of saw early signs that the defense wasn't very good. And, you're just not going to win if you can't stop people, and that's kind of something they haven't had in a while. And so I just think that, yeah, that puts them in the ballgame, right? I mean, I think that we're going to find out certain things about Miller Moss in the coming weeks, right? Could be in Michigan in a couple of weeks where, what happens when this guy's really under pressure, what really, stuff like that. But again, the defense is going to give them a chance to at least be there. And again, right, some of these teams that we thought that were, almost like guaranteed losses, right? When, you're kind of trying to figure out how a team might do. They all had bad weeks, right? And so all of a sudden, everything looks very winnable now. And again, I think that there's just kind of a good feel right now. This was always a team, I think, that a lot of times you kind of thought like got in the way of itself, and I think the best thing that you can say about them through 2 weeks is they've looked like a competent team, right? That they've looked like they're not the kind of team that's going to shoot itself in the foot.
Pretty much everyone else on their schedule shot themselves in the foot this past week. Michigan, blown out of the big house by Texas. No quarterback in sight for that offense. Penn State couldn't defend Bowling Green and barely came back to win that game. Notre Dame at the end of the year just lost a game with they paid $1.5 million to play Northern Illinois. Things have gotten a lot easier, it seems like, on that schedule. And you mentioned the defense, but I think the one thing that really stood out to me offensively too was the run game. USC really showed that it could dominate the game on the ground, and that's something that hasn't always been there for Lincoln Riley and his offense. And, when he was at Oklahoma, that was such a huge part of his scheme and his version of the air raid was just, having arguably two backs they could give the ball to at any time, both in the pass and on the ground. And in Woody Marks and Quentin Joyner, they clearly seem to have that. I mean, we don't want to overreact to a game against Utah State, and obviously a test against Michigan looms here in a couple weeks, but when you're able to just, you have 100 yards rushing by the end of the first quarter, it's a pretty good spot to be in any game. So I think the offensive line is clearing more holes than we expected. The run game looks strong. Miller Moss has really come out firing in 2 weeks. The defense looks great. It's hard to find anything about this team that we don't like at this point. Now, granted, coming into the bye, Michigan is coming up. I think things aren't going to be quite as good as they look right now, but I have to think, and Dylan, we talked about this feels like it needs to be a playoff team at this point.
Right. Overall, like I think there's this feel that they've created that they're tougher, that they're more physical, right? Like even against LSU, obviously they didn't run the ball quite as well there, right? But again, they're going against a much better defense in that case. But you know what? Woody Marks did break some runs in that game, right? And, I think it really helps too in games like this, right? Where you kind of feel like, okay, like could USC get upset by, like some smaller team, whatever, as long as they kind of take care of those bigger opponents. Like you said, I think the path to the college football playoff is pretty clear.
UCLA nearly lost one of those games in its opener to Hawaii. Had a bye, almost feels like a much needed bye after the way things started in week 1. Ben, what's the vibe from Deshaun Foster coming out of that debut?
It has not been pleasant. He's been very short with the media. I asked him, Indiana set a school record with 77 points last week in killing Western Michigan. I said, what makes their offense so great? And he just said, I'd say their quarterback. And then he just stopped. So he's He's not in the mood to like engage or really discuss much of anything. We had a 3-minute media availability with him on Monday, which was the shortest I can ever remember having with a head coach. 3 minutes, and we were like really stretching just to get to that. So I'll be interested to see, if they actually lose a game. A lot of people think they should win, even though they're slight underdogs against Indiana. How is Deshaun Foster going to react to that? Because he clearly did not like the way that the kind of the heat and the pressure intensified him after that pretty clunky showing against Hawaii.
Yeah, but this is the thing too, if you're at a school like UCLA that's kind of right, you're in a bigger market, you've been kind of fighting for like attendance. I mean, part of the job of a coach, I think, right? And I say this same thing, US men's national soccer team, right? These teams that kind of feel, okay, we're kind of close to the big time, but like, you're still kind of fighting to get an audience. Part of your job as the head coach of a team like that is to sell this thing, right? And what do you do? 3-minute media availability? I mean,
Yeah,
come
I mean,
on, you know?
and I'm glad you brought that up because he actually was doing a really good job of that in the off season. I think that, one of the things he needed to do was to galvanize this fan base that's been kind of pretty much beat up since the end of the Bob Toledo era, for two plus decades now. And, he did kind of build some buzz with some of the things they did in the spring and got some recruiting momentum going a little bit. But, you're going to throw all that away if you don't keep it going. And he has not kept it going. From what I understand, actually, the NIL efforts on the football front are very stagnant now. And the recruiting has kind of fallen off since that early push that I wrote about over the summer. So things are not trending in a good direction, even off the field right now for UCLA football. So he really needs to get some wins. This Indiana game might be one of the most pivotal, if not the most pivotal game in the season because they're going into the 3-game stretch of at LSU, Oregon at the Rose Bowl, at Penn State. And even with all three of those teams looking vulnerable, I think you'd still chalk up all three of those as losses. So they lose to Indiana and look bad at home and then go and lose three more. I mean, it could feel like the beginning of the end of the Deshaun Foster era already.
Yeah, and it's not just about the attendance either, right? I do think like the alumni kind of look at the way the coach behaves. I mean, because in theory, right, things are a bit more upfront about like that this is a business now. But like in theory, this is part of their education, these players and stuff. And I think you do look at the behavior of the coach, is kind of like, right, this is the instructor. This is the guy that's going to teach these, right, young men how to become, productive grown-ups and stuff. And this isn't what you want, right? I mean, in any walk of life, right? Even if it's us, like if something doesn't go well, right? If Ryan writes a horrible game story, I don't want it to just like shut down, It's kind of right. Like, and if we were to question him about it, I would hope Ryan would say, yeah, you know what? This, and this didn't go right. We're going to try to make it better. And you kind of keep up the, you try to kind of project like the same, positivity about it, right? And
Yeah.
this is just kind of not. Yeah, and they won. And here's the thing too, they won.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
look bad, but they did win.
Yeah, the three things they really need to fix against Indiana are number one, the run game, which I think it was 23 yards and 13 carries. I mean, that's just horrible against a Mountain West defense. And a big part of that was the offensive line blocking was really subpar. And then, the game management with some of the decisions about being very cautious to go punting on fourth down, in near midfield or in Hawaii territory. And then the inexplicable 9 men on the field, yet we're not going to call a timeout, let them get, run a fake punt and get a first down. I mean, to me, that was the worst moment of the game for Deshaun Foster. So I'll be interested to see how he rebounds and how the game management goes Saturday at the Rose Bowl.
Both coaches kind of find themselves in a very critical point. And I mean, obviously, we all knew this first game in the Big Ten would be important, just impressions wise. But I feel like both teams are in completely opposite places as they enter into this new conference. And before the season, I had chalked up this USC Michigan game upcoming here in 2 weeks to an easy loss, kind of like Dylan said. But at this point, I don't think USC is going to be favored, but maybe they should be. I feel like everything we've seen out of them has shown that the changes they made to specifically be ready for the Big Ten, the physicality of the Big Ten, the toughness of the Big Ten have all worked. The defensive line is playing so much better. The run game is working. The quarterback is making smart decisions. I think that's one thing, we talked about a little bit heading into this season that the difference with Caleb Williams and Miller Moss would be that, Miller would process things more quickly, get the ball out fast. He's done that even more so than we expected. He has had one of the quickest triggers in all of college football, and it's completely mitigated the problems that they thought they were going to have on the offensive line. Now, those problems may still rear their head coming up. You're about to play one of the best defensive lines in college football in Michigan at the Big House. It's a little bit different than playing Utah State at the Coliseum. But my confidence that this team is ready to make that leap into a different conference, into one that, to your point, Dylan, has some offenses that could surprise you in a random road game in October and catch you flat-footed. I don't think this team is going to be caught flat-footed like that after seeing what I've seen these last 2 weeks. Now, whether we're overreacting or not, I think is a fair question to ask. I'm not sure that LSU even is that good of a team, ultimately. I'm not sure Michigan is as bad as they looked against Texas. So that's why I think this game coming up is such an important measuring stick. And it seems like, again, with Indiana, Ben, I wonder, Indiana's not a Big Ten power. This is a team that UCLA, if they want to hang in that middle of the Big Ten pack, which I think is probably a ceiling expectation for them, they need to win games like this.
Absolutely, 100%. But I'm just already fascinated by Indiana and Curt Cignetti, their new coach who came from James Madison. He's won at some very small programs. It won everywhere he's gone. And, when he got hired at Indiana, one of his first quotes was like, he was asked how he was going to sell recruiting at Indiana. And he said, "Google me, I win." So this guy is like, he's full of confidence. At Big Ten Media Day, he made kind of a little bit of a ripple by saying, we're going to the Rose Bowl to kick their ass. And now he did kind of qualify that by saying, I say that every week, we're just going to another stadium to win a game. But, it just kind of made your ears perk up a little bit, right? And I think, in his availability this week, he called UCLA. He said their team had some pretty boys on it. So he's given some bulletin board material. Let's see if let's see if UCLA kind of, comes out with a little bit of chip on its own shoulder. But the thing about Indiana, man, 77 points. They've got a 6th-year quarterback, a 7th-year running back. It looks like they play smart. They don't beat themselves. They're not the Indiana of old. They have kind of a new attitude now. So it really has the makings of they should be favored in this game if you look at the way they played versus the way UCLA's played.
I actually covered Indiana football as my first job out of college, and I will say the similarities between the two schools are fascinating. I do think UCLA's football history certainly is a little prouder over the last several decades, but kind of fascinatingly similar programs.
Yeah,
But
and
did you cover that backfield? It sounds like they've been there forever.
I should mention in a story I wrote that's up on our website at latimes.com/sports that Indiana has not been to the Rose Bowl since 1968. That was their only appearance in the Rose Bowl. They played O.J. Simpson, lost 14-3. And the point of the story I wrote was that teams like Indiana, Minnesota, and Iowa, who are on UCLA's home schedule this year, have not been to the Rose Bowl very often, if at all, over the last 50 plus years. So they are planning on bringing huge contingents of fans. All three of their athletic departments say that their road contingent coming to this game is the biggest for any road game this year. Minnesota's expecting more than 10,000 fans. So that's going to be interesting to see. It'll be nice to see that Rose Bowl kind of filled up a little bit more. Those tarps are just kind of a sad statement on where UCLA attendance and interest is right now in this program. So maybe, some of these Big Ten fans can inject some life at the Rose Bowl.
So we're going to have some visitors here, I guess, from the Midwest. Where would you recommend that they go to eat or dine or booze before and after the game? Do you have any spots, Pasadena?
I'll leave you guys up to that. How about that place, the Mexican place we like to go to in Pasadena? What's the name of that one?
Oh, that's Plashke's secret spot, man. We can't
publicly divulge that.
I don't think we should.
We're trying to get a sponsorship for this round table, guys. Come on.
I would go with King Taco, I guess. It's always good for late
I
night.
like Malbec on Green Street. I love Green Street. One of my favorite little spots there, and they call it Green Street. It's lined with trees. It lives up to its name. It's a Malbec's, as the name might suggest, nice Argentinian steak place. I highly recommend it.
And to finish it out here, we've established the vibes not great in Westwood right now. Not great with Deshaun Foster. Does he turn it around this week?
Woo! That's a tough one. I mean, I think the way things are trending right now, I'm going to go with Indiana in this game. I really like their approach. I like their bravado. I like their talent. I like their experience. I think they feel like they have. I feel like UCLA should feel like it has a lot to prove, but I don't sense that as much from being around this team as I do from Indiana from afar. So to me, that says that Indiana is a team ready to come in here and win this game and live up to the bulletin board material.
I love Kirk Cignetti, so I think I might have my new favorite Big Ten coach. Um, the Big Ten is here for both of these teams. UCLA takes on Indiana this weekend, 4:30 on Saturday. USC has the weekend off, but a huge trip to Michigan upcoming the week after that. Guys, great talking to you this week.